Northwest. Now, there's a master storyteller who has returned to the stage, and he is coming to Green Theatre this Saturday night. He's Michael Harding, the Irish Times journalist and author and storyteller, and a great man for exploring the truths about the human condition. But recently he found that he was actually... despite all of that, he was unable to say certain things that he really wanted to. He was recovering from surgery, and he travelled here to Donegal and headed out to the coast and contemplated life and people in particular that had an effect on him over the years, that had profoundly affected him, that loves and mentors and old friends. And he wrote letters to them, letters that would never be posted. And we were chatting to Michael on the show last year about this, but anyhow, and Michael's here. To cut a long story short, Michael's here. So after all that, rather than...
How are you?
Good, Michael, good. Is it, I was going to say there in the introduction, is it sort of a book tour? Is it sort of the book on tour?
It's a book tour. It is.
So
it's like what I do every time I have a new book. I've done this now over 10 years. When I have a new book out, I do a tour. And it's like an evening with Michael Harding, and it's like 90 minutes on stage, and I just tell stories from the book, right? It's not kind of formally reading the book very much, but it's a bit of fun and a bit of kind of sharing the stories, sharing the ideas that's in the book.
Yeah.
And this particular book, I wrote it, I had 2 operations on the spine 18 months ago.
How are you now?
I'm not too bad, like, just about. I'm all right.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was so happy that the operations went well and that I recovered. I felt I wanted to come to Donegal just because it's a retreat for me. I've always come to Donegal for quietness and peace. You walk along the beaches around the west coast and you couldn't do better. So I'm walking along there, I'm getting better, I'm healing myself. And what started to happen is I started thinking of people that I miss. Like, we said, the woman that was bridesmaid at my wedding, or the fella that was best man at my wedding, or the fella the priest that married us. And I'm thinking of them because they've passed away. They've died in the past 3 years during COVID, and I'm missing them. And the thing that I felt was I never get an opportunity to say thank you to them. Like, there was people like Mary McPartlin. She was a famous singer, and like, Mary was such a help to me in my career. She really practically helped me get into theatre. Tom Hickey was a great actor. He used to do Benji and the Reardons. He was another man that kind of... I wouldn't have been able to get on as a writer if it weren't for those people who showed me the ropes and showed me how to do it and helped me along the way. And there were 2 examples of people who died unexpectedly, where because of COVID, I never had a chance to sit with them and say, do you know, I really appreciate all you did for me. And when I got better myself from a spine operation, I felt this urge. I'd be walking along the beach at Carrickfinn, and Mary McPartlin's voice would come into my head. Or I'd be thinking of Tom Hickey looking, you know, you'd be looking down the long beach at the rocks in the distance, and there'd be some little figure of a person on it. You know, the way they're like tiny. And you'd be thinking, God, that looks like Tom Hickey. And so I thought, I'll write this book as letters to all those people that I felt grateful to, and who passed away in sudden circumstances and in ways that I never had an opportunity to thank them. And that's the book.
Yeah.
Really.
A book that's done really well.
It got to #1 bestseller and all that crack. Thanks be to God.
Yeah. But it was as a chance to, I suppose, the way that you've done it, it's a chance to talk to these people and say things that you never did get a chance
That's
to
right.
in life.
Yeah, because I think, like, one of the things we do miss is saying thank you. Like there's people, I even thought about it, like, last Sunday. What day is today? Monday? Tuesday. I thought of it on Sunday, Mother's Day. My mother passed away like 12 years ago. But there isn't a Mother's Day that passes, I don't think, like, of how many opportunities I missed to thank her. Like in her old age, when she was old and feeble, and I used to be going to visit her in Cavan, and I used to be fed up going to visit her. Do you know, like, you'd be going over every Friday, and she'd be difficult, she'd be awkward, and because she was like in her late 80s, and she'd still insist on coming out to Dunnes Stores with you. And you'd be going round Dunn stores with her, and she'd be barely able to walk across from one aisle to another. But she'd insist on doing it herself. And she'd be going to the yogurts, you know, and they'd be like, which one will I have? And there'd be about 25 yogurts, right? And it would take her the whole day to go through them. And eventually she'd take the same yogurt as she takes every week. Do you know what I mean?
But she had to go through the process.
That's right. And you'd be thinking like, oh, I'm a great hero to be putting up with my mother. But like, it was only when she passed away that I felt such sadness that I didn't spend more time saying to her how much I appreciated the way she reared us, the way she minded us, the way she was so open. Like, even, like, you know, my life has been a queer confusion of doing one thing after another, which wouldn't be kind of conventional. But the mother always enjoyed it. She always supported it. She never criticised anything I did, you know. So that's another example of how I think we miss sometimes in life, saying thank you to people when we have an opportunity. And COVID really gave us this terrible moment of not being able to talk to people, because I was in hospital for 2 months during that period, and all that time the wife had to just drive me to the door, and that was it. You were just left there. And people who were ill but who were dying, they were talking to their loved ones on an iPad.
On devices, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it was sad.
Yeah.
You mentioned your mother there. Is that, in a way, a uniquely Irish thing, or a uniquely Irish thing of certain generations, in that, you know, we deeply loved our parents.
Yeah.
There was things we just didn't discuss, or we didn't express our love the way that we should have, and the way that we can now.
There's a reticence in Irish people, and it came out in that film on Colin Keown. There's a lovely reticence in Irish people, and that's what I saw a review in the New York Times of that film, and that's what it said. It said that the Irish have an extraordinary reticence, that, like, we get fierce excited. I suppose that's why drink is dangerous for us. Like, we get over emotional. I get over emotional, hopping around the place and, you know, going crazy, like happy. But at the same time, there's a reticence in Irish people where they understate their love for each other. And I think that's a great gift. And I think that the other thing about, like, I go up and down, like I was in Waterford now last weekend, and I'm in Donegal this weekend, and I'm doing the whole country with this tour. Although I have to say, Letterkenny next Saturday night is the one that I'm most in favour of, because it's special to me. I've been coming up here and living here, and I wrote the book in Donegal, so it's special. But going around the country, you do meet people. Like, I went in for a coffee. This is only 3 or 4 days ago, and I was travelling up from Waterford, and I went for a coffee shop, and there was a woman, and she was standing at the door of the coffee, like she was working in it. She had been wiping the tables and squirting them with anti-disinfectant. And she's standing at the door. Even when I come on and sit down, she's still standing there. She's looking out and she's watching somebody. And I'm wondering, who is she watching? And eventually she says back to one of the girls in the kitchen, you know, did Tommy get his tea? Right? And he's obviously somebody who's working. He was cleaning drains or plumbing for them outside. And she opened the door. Tommy, did you get your tea? And he said, no. So come in and get your tea. And he came in, Wellingtons and all, went in through to the kitchen to get whatever dinner or tea or lunch he was having. But that kind of minding people, do you know what I mean? That she was watching out for somebody else. And we do a lot of that, and it's what makes us human.
You study the you know, human nature, well, Irish character in particular, and write a lot about it. And I suppose we're right for study, and it's we're a great race. We're a great nationality altogether.
Well, we have huge negativities, right? We have huge things that are wrong with us, but the danger is that we get too overwhelmed by the negative. I mean, most of the time, if you're listening, if you read the Irish Times or any newspaper any day of the week, most of it is kind of negative, or it would depress you with the awful things that happened, the murders, the rapes, the violence, the drugs, the roguery of politicians, whatever. And like right in the middle of that, every Wednesday, I read a column which is just stories about how beautifully human we all are. And I think it's just a balance. It's not like we're kind of denying that we do bad things in Ireland. We do. We make awful mistakes and have done in history. But by God, there's also another part of the story, and that is the human nature and the kindness of people is always beautiful.
And why is it not highlighted more? Why is it not written about more? Why do we have, I'm not saying we have a fascination, but why are we more likely to be drawn towards stories about, oh, did you hear? Or isn't it awful that, it is now, but it could be raining in 5 minutes? You know, why?
I know, yeah. Well, I think it's just because that's human nature. It's human nature for people to kind of almost believe the worst about themselves. And the person that tells you the worst about yourself is yourself. Like, you think of the amount of people who get up in the morning and they have a little voice in the back of their head being negative all the time. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And you make a mistake about you have an appointment for 10 o'clock with the doctor and you miss it because you thought it was tomorrow. That kind of thing. And you crucify yourself. You're constantly being negative about yourself. And we all have that propensity. Like, I think that's just human nature. It's not just Irish. It's everybody has this terrible push that they want to listen to this voice which is negative inside them. And sometimes, like, that's where it ends up in, you know, mental health issues, where you really need to be positive and you really need to, as they used to say, don't be hard on yourself. Think about the amount of times you could say that to somebody. Like, don't be hard on yourself. Don't be always judging yourself negatively. You are a beautiful person.
Is it because we don't want to get above our station, or we don't want to appear to be something that we're not?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, so I haven't a clue. I'm a storyteller. That's all I can do. But all I know is that in the stories, and that you know, I write with my ears. John B. Keane used to say that about his writing. I write with my ears. Like, I'm up and down the country and I'm listening to people and I'm just passing on the stories that I hear. And the two things that you hear, or the conclusions you come to, one is that people can be very hard on themselves and they can get drawn to the negative stories in the newspaper and the negative stories in life. But underneath that, there's a huge, powerful swell. It's like the ocean. It keeps coming back in. And it's a kind of an ocean of kindness. I mean, that's it, you know. And you couldn't get better place to see that kindness than this old county.
Indeed. Yeah, I would like to think so. Yeah. And it's about spotting it.
It's nearly as good as Leitrim.
So, just to let the listeners know, you're from Leitrim.
From Cavan.
Oh, from Cavan.
From Cavan, living in Leitrim, and I'm now kind of in exile in Donegal. And Saturday night.
Good mix.
Saturday night in Angreenon.
Yeah. Just briefly going back to the book, heartening, you know, you had a tough time with the back surgery, obviously, then recovery, and you had the idea of writing the book in the form of letters.
Yeah.
But it's, and I've said this to other writers, it's always heartening when the book does well. It's nice to see it well received.
Look, this is the kind of success, overnight success after 30 years. Like, I'm writing and doing shows and going around the country since 1984, right? And loving it. But it wasn't until about 2006. So that's like 30 years. And then all of a sudden, I've had 7 books now that have been bestsellers, and sure, it's great.
But isn't that the arc of society? Isn't that the way where the country is now sort of positioned? We've become more open to, if you like, you know, what you're preaching, what your philosophy is, what you're about, and you know, it's seeking out positivity, talking about the human character in all its various forms. We're more open to discussion.
We're more open, and I'll tell you a great thing as well. There's more books available. Like Irish people are reading far more books than they were when I was young. And when I was young, like in my 20s or 30s even, the amount of publishers that published Irish writers was very few, you know?
Yeah, there are definitely more Irish
books.
There's
huge amount now. I mean, you could go around any county and you'll find really, really interesting and good writers. So I think it's, and the libraries are a great help, but I think that generally there's more people reading. Yeah.
Anyway, back to the show, which is Saturday night, and it's It's you described it or you mentioned the phrase earlier, an evening with Michael Harding, and that's what it is.
It's
and
pure storytelling,
and there seems to be a lot of comedy. You seem to be
I think you'll have a good hour laugh. There's nothing as funny as misery, so I do share with people some of the details of the awful things that happened in the hospital. Like there's things that I couldn't say on radio that happen in hospital, but like it's funny how miserable things are funny. Do you know that kind of way?
Yeah. Well, you'll find humour.
Yeah. You don't laugh at it when it's happening. When you're lying there and they come with a big hose pipe to stick into you somewhere between your legs, you're not laughing, you know. But when you're telling the story later, it seems to be terribly funny.
Yeah.
You know. So there's laughter in it, and there's a kind of I read from the book, obviously, and a certain amount of spontaneity. I was here, I was on Greenon about 4 years ago, and I remember I was so excited and happy that I went out on stage and I started humming or singing, I just dropped in to see you all. And the whole audience started singing with it. And then I stopped because I didn't know the words. And I had to say to the audience, I don't know the words, and they were not happy at all. They were highly insulted. But anyway, I won't try that trick. I won't try that trick again.
They were relieved. They probably didn't know the rest of the words themselves.
They might.
Yeah, but it could go. I mean, this isn't scripted. This, you know, you might have pointers, but it could go off in any direction.
I have basic stories, which are the stories of the book. It's like how I grew up, how I got sick, and how I recovered by wandering the beaches of Donegal.
Very good. Okay. Saturday night in Greenon.
Saturday night in Greenon. See you there.
Pleasure.
I'll be signing books afterwards, by the way. Okay. They'll be on sale. I'll be signing the books afterwards.
Or even if you have a book, feel free to bring it along.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Or anybody else's book you want me to sign either.
Fair enough. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, John.